in today's world, in Western societies at least, women have the same rights as men. But it's easier to forget that 2,000 years ago, women did not have that luxury. Even if we just go back 100, 200 years ago, even in Western societies, women did not have those benefits that men have. And then 2,000 years ago, they had even less rights than they do today. So it is in this world of 2,000 years ago that we find something very peculiar. You have to remember, back in those days, women, if a woman witnessed something, right? If that woman witnessed something, or if something happened to that woman, it was required that the woman, especially talking about, let's say, in a Hebrew society, in the Israelites. So, and let me just go back for a second. That God had given women many rights. God specifically in the laws that the Israelites received, there was stipulated many rights that women had. Still, the mentality of the time, the mentality of that culture, was that women were still inferior to men. Even though God had given these rights to women, men still viewed women as inferior, and if a woman had something done to her, she would still need various witnesses, because her witness was not enough. As opposed to a man, if something happened with a man, he could just have himself and another witness, and the case is resolved. With a woman, she would need multiple witnesses for the same problem, and they were not viewed as reliable. They were not, so many different things with women those days, that and that was mainly a mentality of those times, and a mentality that was maintained for many centuries afterwards, until we come to today's day and age, and people have a different view on women. We know that women are just as capable as men, but we also know that women are different from men. A woman is not a man is not a woman. There's different strength, women thinks different than man, different body, different many things. But it's not to take away from the woman, because if you are a woman, you are blessed to be a woman. Someone is a man, he's blessed to be a man. The two complement each other. The two do not oppose each other. So it was in those days, 2,000 years ago, that something extraordinary happened. The writers of the New Testament, if they were lying about the events that happened regarding Jesus' life, and if they were lying regarding the events of Jesus' crucifixion, death, and resurrection, if they were trying to embellish Scripture, if they were trying to make it more believable, right, to the mentality of that particular time, if they were trying to do that on purpose, if they were trying to convince people by lying, they would have written the Gospels a little bit different, because something very strange, you could say, was written in the Gospels, and something that does not make absolutely any sense unless what happened was absolutely true. Because as we know, women were not reliable witnesses in those days. So to have a woman be a witness to something, if you only have one or two women together, there's no man involved there, they're not going to be believed that easily. So here's the wonderful thing. When Jesus was resurrected, and you have, like in Matthew 28, and after the Sabbath it says, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to look at the grave. And behold, a severe earthquake had occurred. For an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. The guards shook for fear of him and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who has been crucified. He is not here, for he has risen, just as he said. Come, see the place where he was laying. Go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead, and behold, he is going ahead of you into Galilee." Now, in other books of the Bible, it also says that Jesus himself also appeared to the women. And here's the extraordinary thing. God chose the women to be the first witnesses of the resurrection. God chose the women to go and tell the rest of the disciples of the resurrection of the Messiah. In a time period where women were not to be believed, or not easily believed, in a time frame where women needed multiple witnesses if they wanted to be believed by others, and those witnesses would have to be male. If you have two women, it's still women. So God chose the women to be witnesses to the resurrection. And if the Bible was a lie, if the Bible was a fabrication by a few people, those people would not write that women were the first witnesses to the resurrection. They would write that men were the first witnesses to the resurrection, because men are the ones that can be believed. And that's the mentality of those days. Today we think differently, but you go back, step back 2,000 years ago, and if you were writing those books, if you were writing the New Testament, and you were trying to embellish that, or you try to lie about it, you would write that man witnessed the resurrection. But because what the writers wrote was the truth, they were not trying to embellish the truth. They weren't trying to lie so they could convince others. They were writing the truth. And because God manifested himself and showed these women the truth, and told these women, these first witnesses, go and tell others that the Messiah is not here. The Messiah is risen. And as the women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, the man said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but he has risen. Remember how he spoke to you while he was still in Galilee, saying that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, and be crucified, and the third day rise again." And they remembered his words, and returned from the tomb, and reported all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. Luke 24:5-9.